on the receive and file, I really appreciate the work that the council's been doing, and it's been my honor to be part of that work, and I appreciate that immensely. And I did want to just note that not only are council members welcome to participate in the open house event that happens, but actually as work groups get formed, one of the nice things about the Food Council is the work groups are open to the full community, and we actually have lots of community participation on those work groups. And so it's not just the Food Council doing the work. And I will note also at Food Council meetings, we also have participation of lots of community members. But on those work groups, we also get lots of input and great ideas. And so there's lots of opportunities for council members to plug in and get involved in those areas if they want. And anybody else have any comments on the receiving and file motion? Well, then let's vote on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And I was able to clarify in terms of the last action that it looked a little confusing because we referred to an ordinance, but that's because the language in the resolution we are amending also referred to that very ordinance. So all we're doing is we're amending the language that was in the resolution, and now the title, as you can see on the screen, resolution 2015 R-459 as follows. And there's a large paragraph there that says that pursuant to the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17, Section 17.60G, the City Council hereby delegates authority to the Community Planning and Economic Development Department Director or designees for the City Department properties to the Public Works Department Director, the City Engineer, or designees for all other city-owned properties to make and execute commercial garden leases pursuant to the commercial garden policy adopted of even date herewith, with market gardeners and urban farmers for city-owned properties. And then we're striking at no cost to the city. And then it ends with for a term not to exceed 5 years using a form approved by the city attorney. So we're clear on what we're voting on. Any discussion or question about that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And then I think that concludes your presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate all the good work and being patient with us today during your report.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And now we have one last item that we're going to take up today. Also very, I think, very good work and long in coming. This is the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement. The proposed action was receiving and filing the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement, a 5-year plan to ensure an innovative and equitable engagement system for the city of Minneapolis. And I am interested and have the intention that maybe we can do more than receive and file. This is a 5-year plan about something I think the council cares deeply about. So I had an interest in maybe adopting or approving this plan, but I also recognize that we might not have the time to give it as much attention as we want when we were thinking it was a receive and file. So my plan is actually to receive the presentation today, but then move that we wait 2 cycles and then bring it back, and then with the intention of adopting it as a city council. And hopefully in that 2-cycle delay, it'll give every council member on the committee an opportunity to meet with staff or myself or somebody from the commission and kind of look at this plan and weigh in and put our mark on it if we want to. I will note that at least one council office has come to me expressing an interest in getting more involved in this. And so part of it is not just in response to my own wish to have the council adopt this and endorse it more strongly, but also to be responsive to that. So with that expectation set, now I think we're ready, Mr. Rubendorf, for you to go forward with your presentation. Thank you.
Chair Gordon and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to present this today. As Chair Gordon was framing this up, this is a substantial body of work that we've undertaken for a couple of years now, actually several years, working with the community to really co-create a plan about how we are going to ensure that the city and the department's community engagement work is equitable and helps to achieve the One Minneapolis goal. I'm just going to do a quick frame up here, and then Ayanna Kennerly from our office, and then Stacy Sorensen will do the body of the presentation. We also have Araya Fine here, who's one of our creative city making artists, who will be talking a bit about his his work and how it has influenced the creation of this plan. They're going to go over a bit about the process. We used quite an extensive engagement process on this, and I will say, just to kind of cue that up, in that we put out a draft about a year ago and received a lot of feedback saying the draft wasn't right, and so we ended up doing a substantial rewrite before bringing it back again. They're going to go a little bit over the high-level view of what's in the plan, and then also some of the changes that are already underway as a result of this work, and really making our work more impactful. Just real quickly, the blueprint is a high-level multi-year strategy to ensure the innovative and equitable engagement work by the department. It's really a guiding framework for our work as we support the work of both neighborhood organizations and also the city enterprise. It's data-driven, and we will measure our success based on the city's 8 diversity factors, which we're using currently for the city boards and commissions. Age, gender, disability, sexual orientation, renter-owner status, race, ethnicity, income, and formal education. So we've established benchmarks which are included in here to have a clear goal about what we're working on. Also, the blueprint includes some clear definitions about what we mean by engagement and equitable engagement, so that we found that through our feedback from working with the communities, just being really clear on this work. The blueprint is really grounded in the vision of achieving the One Minneapolis goal and what the role of the NCR department is in achieving that goal, and how our role is really to support the engagement of the community as we work on equity in our city and being able to make sure that the community voice is at the table. As I mentioned, a number of pieces of this are already underway. We've been implementing this somewhat as we've been developing it, but this is a consolidated plan which we are presenting to you today. With that, if I may, hand it over to the 2 staff to present the rest of the report.
Chair Gordon and council members, good afternoon, and I'm excited to be here again. My name is Ayanna Kennerly, and I'm the African American Community Specialist for NCR. So why do we need to do this? So the purpose is to build capacity for people to participate, ensure broad inclusion in decision-making, program development, and service delivery, and recruit, train, and appoint people of color, including people with disabilities, to neighborhood and city advisory boards to ensure accurate representation of the city's diverse communities. So as we all know, the city demographics are actually changing, and so we essentially need to make sure that all of the engagement strategies that we use are meaningful to communities and are ideas and strategies that communities would like us to use. And so some of the results that we're looking for are increased community capacity, transparency, and accountability, among other things.
So in our work, we use the IAP2 model. IAP2 is the International Association of Public Participation. It's one of those long acronyms, but it basically says that we should engage residents to the effect of how important is this to them? How much time do we have? How many resources do we have? We hear that people want to be engaged, but occasionally we also hear, hey, you're over-engaging us. So really paying attention to the spectrum. We also rely on IAP2 for their core principles of community engagement. We pay a lot of attention to this. We hope that you do as well. And in the beginning, we thought it was important to look and see where are we at right now so that we can hopefully see our progress. And this is from 2014. You can see that percentage of people of color on neighborhood boards, only about 17%, commissions, 16%, citywide, 40%. But by changing 1 or 2 people on each board, that graph looks a whole lot better. Now, this was from 2014. We'll be doing another boards and diversity and neighborhood survey in 2016, so we hope this looks a lot better come this fall.
So this slide captures the timeline that we use for the blueprint. So 2 things that I want to point out. Number 1, again, we had 2 45-day draft periods. And as David indicated earlier, the first comment period that we heard a lot of feedback that the document was not where it needed to be. So we heard that we needed to make the document less punitive and more collaborative. And then we also did not have as much representation as we would like from underrepresented communities. We had underrepresented individuals come to our meetings, but we certainly wanted to get more specific ideas of how they'd like to be engaged as we go forward as a department. So in the second comment period, one of the things that we did is we did a number of sessions specifically with cultural specific organizations, and we did a significant redraft of the document to take the feedback that we received from neighborhood organizations and residents in the city. And so the next slide actually shows a number of focus groups that we did. You can go to the next. And then lastly, this is the second wave of the focus groups that we did at the end of 2014.
So once again, the feedback we heard was that we should be more positive, we should be more collaborative, that we as a city should be a little bit more consistent in terms of how we engage with residents, that we should be more culturally sensitive, realizing that one size really doesn't fit all, and that we should find other avenues for people to be involved, maybe not just coming down to meetings or, evening meetings or daytime meetings, but that festivals, events, and that there was a lot of things that we don't always value in terms of engagement, and that needs to change. So the blueprint has 5 main strategies. The first one is really working more with cultural communities, and again, appropriately so, supporting inclusive and vibrant neighborhood organizations, working better with our city, with our community partners, and also with our city departments. And in a few minutes, we'll talk a little bit more about things that we're starting to do to make those changes. And again, finally, evaluating and celebrating success.
So creative city making. So creative city making uses art, resources, and practices, design and test new interfaces between the city and community, and facilitates community engagement with new tools for engaging underrepresented communities. So for example, we use CCM as a tool to actually do engagement work. So again, the artists that we work with are D.A. Bullock and Araya Fine, and one of the things that they did was create a pulpit that actually community members helped them beautify, if you will. It was a number of youth members who helped them make the pulpit colorful. And so anyway, we took the pulpit around different areas of the city at events where residents were already there, and then got their input on a number of questions that relate to the blueprint. So one of the strategies that we have in the blueprint is actually to try new ideas. And so in doing so, having a pulpit where residents they feel comfortable going to the pulpit and answering the questions was a way that we help get feedback for the blueprint. And then another thing with the blueprint and the pulpit is that we were actually able to try an idea that residents had. So we heard from residents that they would like to use video as a way to give input as opposed to the standard attending a community meeting. So that's something new that we tried and something that we found very successful. And then we're going to show a quick video.
I would offer more jobs in the community. I would build more with our youth in our community so that youth can have places to go do fun things and not stand on the corner. So like a community center.
Yeah, along with my team, we help the department engage neighborhood organizations and other communities around the whole concept of developing the blueprint, work we've been doing for a couple of years. It's real important that we get good input, do that community engagement to find out what people think, especially when working on decisions that may impact them. So that was my role, was to help with that outreach.
I think that there's a lot of ways for people to get involved, but they feel a little bit secret. So I'm like you were just telling me about what is the Minneapolis committee?
NCR, Neighborhood and Community Relations.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed. So even understanding that there's ways for people to get involved, that and having access towards those involvements, more tangible, easier to do.
I think the key important steps that I have been doing in relevance or that relates to the blueprint was reaching out to the East African communities in the city of Minneapolis and making sure that they have equal voice into contributing all the processes within the city level, making sure that they have some input into all the processes, whether it's coming from CPED, Community Planning and Economic Development, whether it's coming from Public Works, whether it's coming from some other departments or something like that, making sure that their voices are heard, their voices are valued, and making sure that we create an environment where they can feel they have an equal voice.
And I would also put like a grocery store. We only have 2 grocery stores in this community. We need to get more grocery stores around here so people can eat healthy food, like fresh fruits and vegetables.
Well, I think having more representation from communities on a micro basis.
My name is Joel Martinez. I've been living in North Minneapolis since 2001. I'm a Northside resident. One of the biggest things that I'm an advocate is for just more activities for youth during the day and after the night. It seems like all the activities, recreational stuff, are usually in South Minneapolis and Northeast Minneapolis. A lot of there's no open gyms, there's no theaters, there's no things for youth. So I think that the lack of activity, there's more crime for youth to be involved.
So we needed the document because our department does community engagement work for the entire city, and we wanted to make sure that the community engagement work that we're doing actually reflects what residents want. So if we're doing community engagement work and it's not what residents want, then there's really no use of us doing it at all. So it's really important to us to work with culture-specific organizations, neighborhood organizations, and other trusted organizations throughout the city and understand what exactly are the ways that they'd like us to engage and make sure that we are doing that. And then in addition to doing that, when we have success, be able to tell other city departments, here's what's worked for us. Our residents told us this is what they wanted us to do, and we've had this level of success since then.
Emails are totally overwhelming, but that's a possibility. And I think it might be about visibility too. For example, I just took a little survey from, I think it was Knock, and it was all about like police in the neighborhood. And that got me thinking about, I see police all the time in their cars, but I never like talk to them. There's no real specific engagement. There's no like getting out of your car and being like, hey, I patrol this area.
An education system controlled by parents and students.
One-time grants to get people sort of over a hump.
I am Miss Elder Naima Richmond. I'm known throughout the community as Miss Naima, Elder Naima, Mother Naima, and all of the above names.
And where are we? What neighborhood are we in?
We're in the Homewood area.
Which is in North Minneapolis?
North Minneapolis. Yeah. Beautiful North Minneapolis. I guess I have an issue when I do hear about things, I go to the table, but they come already with plans without my input. So you're saying I'm bringing this to you for you to approve, but I should have been at the table in the very beginning.
The creative means are really important, and working with artists is critical, and it's been critical. So just for example, using the equity pulpit that you and Araya were able to come up with the assistance with Juxta students. So being able to take something like that you can actually move in different pockets of the city, take it to an event where we typically wouldn't have access to those residents and get their input, it's huge.
I recently was hearing a gentleman talk, and he was talking about the housing disparity in Minneapolis and how crazy that is, and the idea of like affordable housing is really only affordable for those, at a certain percentage of the median income in Minneapolis, which is fairly high. So what happens to all those folks that only make like $5,000 to $15,000 a year? Where do they live? Where can they go? And I think a more equitable Minneapolis would be to take those folks into account.
Chair Gordon and committee members, my name is Araya Fine. I'm one of two. DA Bullock couldn't be with us today, but he's the other creative city making artist that worked on this project. I think the video obviously largely speaks for itself, but wanted to just kind of highlight it was a tool that we put together in working with the department to really implement, show a model of implementation of what the blueprint really is about, right? So strategy one is about expanding engagement practices. And so this was a way of kind of thinking about really taking this right here, right? This podium pulpit here and this microphone and bringing it out to the community because, a lot of people can't make it to this space. this time of day, or, or don't feel comfortable. There's a lot of things. So we used, the video is obviously edited, but each of those people that we talked to had this opportunity to give voice to their concerns, their interests, the things that they'd like to happen in the community. And so we had an opportunity over the course of the last year with the Creative City Making is to really create this as one tool, as one model of what public comment and engagement with residents could look like when you take, the Blueprint framework and think about how to creatively engage community. And so strategies 2 and 3 are about neighborhood organizations and about community partners. And what we were able to do is sort of provide a model. And so hopefully going forward, we're still kind of in talks about what it will look like. But this is the kind of tool that the pulpit that you saw on there is the kind of tool that we can bring out to community events and did all last summer, but could make that available to the neighborhood organizations, to community partners to really be able to engage more directly with community members in ways that are accessible to them and are ways that brings the conversations that you have in this space right out to the community so that they can have a sense of how to engage and have voice in things that impact them. So I'll leave it there.
Councilmember Glidden has a comment or question.
Thanks very much. I might just start with a few questions. So I've been waiting actually for when we would hear some feedback on, and I guess this is sort of a bigger feedback piece on the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement, but this is where we have this creative city making coming back. And I have been looking for when we might have some recommendations on how to utilize better throughout our enterprise or through the organizations we touch some of the creative city making ideas. And is there more that's going to come to us on this, or is this kind of where we take and we try to figure out where does it go? Because and it's interesting because Araya and I have actually had a one-on-one conversation about exactly this. How do we take the work that's been piloted in multiple city departments, but then see how do we use that to broaden to recommendations that might affect the enterprise and be used in a variety of ways?
Chair Gordon and Council Vice President Glidden, excellent question. I know Gagoon is on vacation this week. She was planning on being here, but she is planning on coming back. I believe it's to the committee of the whole with a broader presentation around the Creative Cities Making project and its opportunities within the city. We wanted to move forward with what we were doing on our particular aspect and how we were utilizing it. And so I know there's another opportunity for the entire program to be presented to the council as a whole. What we're going to do with this, we did this as Araya was mentioning, we did this for a way to gather input into the actual development of the blueprint. And we received, this is an edited video, as you mentioned, but we received lots of comments from the pulpit that were included in our consideration. And so there's more like a raw video that really just have comments coming in. But what we also decided as far as the department moving forward is that we're going to use this as a creative tool and make that available to neighborhood organizations with some criteria, where we're going to be looking for projects that are ready to go, how they would use video as a way to creatively engage people around a particular topic or subject that they're working on, and that they would be submitting those ideas to us and do that 2 or 3 times a year over the next couple of years to see how that actually, how effective that actually would be. So we are looking at moving this from just on the blueprint and then actually bringing that out to a tool to the community.
So, okay, so I'm looking at this page that has 5 items on it, Blueprint for Equitable Engagement Strategies. And I'm just trying to hone in on what's your recommendations so that I am a little bit more clear. And so these are your recommendations that are coming from this report?
Chair Gordon and Councilmember Glidden, what we landed on in this, our first report that we put out was really tactical. It had a lot of details into there. And really, we got a lot of feedback saying that was just, it was too limiting because it didn't allow creativity. So what we landed on, this is intended to be a strategic plan. And so these are our 5 strategies over the next 5 years of areas that we're going to work in. In the actual document, it goes through a lot more detail about a little bit more on what those strategies will be. But yes, to answer your question, we are, in essence, the blueprint, the strategies that are identified, these are the strategies we'll be working on over the next next 5 years to accomplish the goals that we've identified here. So it is our recommendation that we are moving forward with these strategies. That is correct.
Okay.
We do have some examples that we're going to go through of things that were actually, that are now underway that are a result of these strategies in order to accomplish our goals.
Okay. So I will tell you then, just maybe for next time, I'm really interested in this one that's item number 4. Ensure city departments are well equipped to conduct effective public participation. This is one that's a pretty big challenge, just because, there's a lot of limitations on the flexibility and, kind of the creative mind energy that city staff has to put into the engagement piece when they're focusing on the more, what do I need to get done piece. I mean, just there's a lot of reasons for that, in addition to the issue of just sometimes, we're challenged in trying to initiate enterprise objectives in a system that seems to favor a lot of discretion and, that kind of thing for each department. And so I do think, though, that this is a really important initiative. I can tell you just from the very individual things that I've been working on in my ward, history, local designation projects, and on, just the expectations of the public today for what does engagement and seeking opinion and all of that look like are just different and higher. And if we're not able to satisfy the ability and the desire of residents to help lead, how do we get from A to B, we're just, again, we're really missing the boat on how does government, keep in touch with the people we're really here to serve and represent and all that. So I think it's a challenge for a lot of reasons, but it's, I think, a very critical recommendation, and I'm here to help, but, I'm also here to understand where you've gotten to with your team and making those recommendations.
Chair Gordon and Council Vice President Glidden, that area, I would say, is one of our most recent biggest successes. We have, in the last probably year, our work with other city departments has expanded considerably. If I have to say, one of my biggest kind of self-criticisms of the department is the first few years that we were up and running, we really focused in on building those external relationships with cultural communities and neighborhood organizations and establishing that credibility in the community, which I think was vitally important. But at the same time, we hadn't focused too much on the internal enterprise support. That in the last year has changed considerably, and now we are being pulled into a lot of different conversations. I see our role as being really consulting with other departments. The principles that the IAP 2 principles that Stacy was referring to, we frequently will sit down with departments, walk through their engagement, what are they trying to achieve, what level of engagement are they looking at? Are they looking at co-creating something with the community? Are they looking to inform, and what have you? And that has proven to be very successful. There's more areas in the city to grow, and there's a lot of growth yet to be done there. But I would say there's significant progress, and some of the examples that they will go through in just a minute here will highlight a few of those.
So you all queued this up beautifully, because writing a plan is easy, but implementing a plan, that's where our work begins. So a few examples of the work we're doing with city departments include the workplace partnership support, which I know you're all extraordinarily familiar with, the MPD body camera discussions, community dialogues, where we take city staff out into the community and have them talk with community members at their location. Again, we're really trying to work with departments to plan ahead, to really pay attention to what community schedules are, not what our staff schedules, and to be more sensitive to the needs of communities. We're also working more closely than ever with neighborhood organizations, and again, doing some retooling in terms of how we do engagement. We've done a number of learning labs. The Immigration Affects Us All, that was such a great lab, especially because it was geared towards neighborhood organizations, but about half the people that came out on a cold night were city staff who came on their own time who said, I need to know about this. This is important. We've also got some subject matter labs that we're doing more on tenant rights and responsibilities, when to use interpreters, and so on. So again, going a little bit further, David mentioned data-driven, taking a look at what measurements are there and what's appropriate measurements and how do people want to be engaged.
And so to continue on for current work, boards and commissions, so to diversify applicant pools and partner with community organizations to increase outreach to applicants. So we see our role is to get more residents to the table and then to support them when they get there. So making sure that residents understand that language should not be a barrier to participation. And if they are appointed to a board or commission, we can certainly provide translations and interpretations so that they can actively participate.
And I think this one's David's.
And then one of the other things as we were out, as I mentioned, our first few years in operation, we really focused in on building those external relationships and that credibility within the community, which I think was very effective. But one of the things that we were hearing was that, I think to Council Vice President Glidden's point there was that we weren't necessarily crossing that work over good enough between the two, the body of work around neighborhood organizations and the cultural engagement work. And so that was a pretty clear message. So we looked at internally of how our department is actually organized, and we're reorganizing right now. We're doing a management reorganization. We've eliminated one of the management positions, so there's fewer managers in the department. Now there's two in addition to me. And the council just recently approved the deputy director position, and so the access and outreach team, which does most of our under-engaged community outreach, as well as our neighborhood team, are being brought together under one. And so that they're going to create their business plan, they're going to create their work plans together. And so there's much stronger alignment. That work was occurring, but I think we're going to strengthen that by removing the structural barrier about bringing the work of the neighborhood and the cultural engagement work together and co-creating, in essence, the work plan for the city and to be more effective. So with that, that ends our presentation. I thought there was a question slide at the end there, so my apologies on that. Apparently it's not coming up, but that ends my presentation, or our presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Maybe we can have a little bit of discussion here on this. I think I'll just note that I think this could be one of the more significant pieces of work that the committee can even touch. And I do think there's an aspect, especially well, there's a couple of different aspects. There's one where this work looks outward to the community over and over again, especially with the neighborhood organizations, and how can we do outreach to groups and entities and communities that aren't that well engaged. But there's also an inwardly facing piece about departments and expectations that they might have to work with the NCR better. So I think there could be a real role for the council to weigh in and have some input on this. So I'm looking forward to doing that over the next couple of weeks as well. But I think Councilmember Bender has some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate this work, and I think it's moving in the right direction. I do agree, though, that I would like to see as much specificity here as possible, and I think that partly has to come from more conversations with policymakers about where we want to land. I think, I've observed now that there's a lot of sort of inconsistency in the amount of engagement that we do on different projects through different departments. It's kind of an iterative process. It has a lot to do with the policy itself, if it's in a ward, which council member serves that ward. There's a lot of individual factors that go into deciding each piece. But I do think, I think it'd be nice if this document could help empower our staff across the enterprise to do, to both encourage folks to think about engagement differently, but also empower our staff to kind of determine their own recommendations for engagement in order to kind of make sure we're reaching all of the constituencies, that we're providing factual information and making data-driven decisions as much as possible. So if there's a way for us to get to sort of more specificity in what we're sort of expecting from, and also empowering our staff and neighborhood organizations and boards and commissions and all of these other stakeholders that are really running the engagement for our city, I think that would be great. And it's maybe this whole task is a tall order. And so, I'd also like to offer my help in trying to make some specific recommendations about how we get there. The comprehensive plan is another big citywide, enterprise-wide engagement piece that I know you're involved in. And so just thinking about how this document could and is and would guide that work as an exercise is something I'm going to be doing, and think about if I can offer some concrete suggestions for how to get to more of that specificity.
Chair Gordon, if I may, if I understood your point there, we see our role as helping to support more of a consistent engagement strategy across the board through the enterprise. It is, as Council Vice President Glidden was mentioning, it's a large enterprise and a lot of people moving in different directions. We are working very diligently and deliberately about trying to increase that uniformity about engagement. That's why we've adopted the IAP2 principles, which actually gives you a nice spectrum and allows people to really think through their engagement strategy about what is it they're trying to accomplish and think. And so we've been working more closely with a lot of departments on thinking that through and helping them in that process. We've also, we have done IAP2 training a couple times within the enterprise. We're looking at continuing to do that, and we've established accessibility network, basically, which is also around engagement and training staff within each of the departments. There's still a lot more work to be done in that particular area, but there's a number of things that we've implemented already to continue to build that foundation. I will say from the department standpoint, as this is rolled out in the enterprise, we are getting lots of demands from other departments to help them with this, which is great. And we're really busy on doing that. And some of the examples that came forward, even just the current one that's going on right now is the police body camera and working with the police department, which is a huge opportunity for us to build a stronger relationship with the police department as well. So we're working on supporting the enterprise more with building that more unified strategy. Again, there's more work to be done, but we're definitely moving in that direction. The plan is intended to be multi-year, and so we're looking at trying to do this over a period of time. One of the things that I talked to Chair Gordon about was, and that we can talk before we come back at the next cycle or two, whether we have like an annual report coming back to the council reporting where we're at, what's been occurring, what are some of the benchmarks that we've achieved. Be happy to do that if the council feels that would be relevant and helpful.
Okay, appreciate that. Do you have any further questions, Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one final comment. I think that's very helpful, and I particularly the trainings piece for staff. And I also think that to the extent that there are tools developed, it would be helpful to see them. And if that's a future task, I would wholeheartedly support us at least creating tools for department staff to use. I often observe that we aren't necessarily defining the goals of our community engagement and really understanding what we're asking questions about, what decision we're trying to inform. And I think even just sort of some simple questions or checklists or simple tools that staff could use as a baseline, of course, building on them or changing them as needed for their content. But I think that would be really helpful and continue to help kind of challenge all of us to think about, why are we doing this? What questions are we asking? Are we reaching the right people? Is this authentic engagement? Are we asking questions that are really informing policies, not just sort of checking off on a box? We held a meeting and asked people what they thought. So I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I also appreciate the work and the multiple rounds of going out to the community and get feedback that went into this, and the different drafts and the NCEC, the commission weighing in on it. Appreciate that, and holding it over a little isn't to say that it didn't come to us in a great form either. I actually wholeheartedly embrace the five big strategies. I think there's more an interest in, okay, what can we get in under those strategies now to really strengthen them? And there might be some creative ideas or interesting ideas. I think your examples were really telling, that you picked out a few recent examples of when we maybe did community engagement a little more thoroughly or a little bit more robustly than we have in the past. And we're in the middle of the body camera one, of course, so we're right in the middle of that one. And I think if we also all thought about it, we'd look at some neighborhood organizations and we'd think, wow, that one really did a great process for that decision, or that one's fully functioning and healthy and others aren't. And so the idea is looking at what we think is working and works best and kind of raise the standards would be great, maybe even for all departments. And I don't know where the ideas will be or where they'll land, but I think there's a lot of them up here and even on the council. I appreciate the resource question and that, and it, I wonder if that could tie into the training idea, because if you could kind of take the expertise from your department or the templates you've developed and then get somebody from the other department to understand, then get that knowledge and be able to replicate it, that could really be powerful too. So we'll see. And what I'm hoping is in the next 4 weeks or so, we'll have a chance to look at these more as council offices and work with staff and maybe define some of the, I think you called them activities and almost the sub-strategies and what can we do, and come back with something that's just a little bit clearer and maybe Councilmember Bender said more details or specifics or that kind of stuff. So I'm very hopeful. Are there any other comments from anybody up here then? Well, I'm just going to, I guess I should probably move to postpone that 2 cycles then, and this will come back, and I'm encouraging staff and council members interested to set up meetings, and I'm happy to participate in those too. And maybe we can even create a little work group with some policy aides and council members and some of you to check in along the way to make sure that I'm not just punting this out and not taking my responsibility, because I want to get involved. All those in favor of postponing 2 cycles, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much for that report. And turns out our business here is not actually done yet. With that earlier amendment that I so awkwardly tried to get right, I think I failed to, because I think there was actually both resolutions that were referred to needed to be amended, and we only amended one. And I'm going to ask Attorney Trammell to guide us through what action we should take.
Chair Gordon and members of the committee, the amendment that you made would have been to Resolution 2015R-459, which is actually entitled Delegating Authority to Make and Execute City Commercial Garden Lease Form Contracts. That's the title of that resolution. The Community Garden Resolution is 2010R-119. And it reads a little bit differently, but it does have that same language at no cost to the city in it. So the motion to strike that language could still be made. There's one added complication of that particular motion, in that the former resolution from 2010 refers to City Charter Chapter 4, Section 25, which is no longer a valid reference. And although I've been sitting here and I've looked at the side-by-side comparison and it says that language was retained, I've been unable to find it in the time that we've been holding this meeting. So while I think you could move to strike that language, there may be further amendment needed. Either just to strike the authority part pursuant to City Charter Chapter 4, Section 25, because we do have City Council approved contracting policies, and such a lease would fall under those contracting policies that the City Council has previously approved. So one solution would be to just strike also pursuant to City Charter Chapter 4, Section 25 from that prior resolution, which I believe the city clerk has forwarded to you.
Thank you. So I think, I guess there's a lot of steps that we could take to do that. Maybe we should just move to reconsider the previous action and get rid of that first. So could because we'll have to even fix the title. So why don't we, I'll move to reconsider the action that we just took. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now I will move to amend both the resolutions that were just referred to, and you have, everybody should have gotten in your inbox. There's the 2010 R-119, and that one you haven't? Oh, I thought I forwarded it to everybody. Maybe it's still sitting there waiting to be forwarded. Now everybody should have it again. Okay, Does everybody have that? Okay. And as the attorney recommends, we will strike the pursuant to city charter, chapter 4, section 25, and then we will probably have to make that T in the capital. So lowercase to uppercase. And then as written, striking at no cost to the city, and then also move to amend resolution 2015 R-459 with the correct title as printed in front of you, and to strike the at no cost to the city there. Is that motion clear? All right, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries, and you have my thanks and for all your patience with that, and we are now adjourned.